What drives someone to learn hand-to-hand combat? Is it a search for confidence? Is it to quell the primal fear of fighting? Or is it a quest for discipline and mastery of one's body and mind? Whatever the reasons, humans have pursued the martial arts for thousands of years and have dedicated lifetimes to its craft. Although young in its inception, mixed martial arts has seen a meteoric rise in popularity over the last 10 years. Combining lethal striking, bone-jarring takedowns, and fight-ending submissions, it is quickly challenging boxing as the nation's premier combat sport. The casual fan might not know that Portland and the areas surrounding it have long been respected as the breeding grounds for some of the world's top fighters. Champions like Randy Couture and Matt Lindland first evolved their fight games from top-tier wrestlers to well-rounded mixed martial artists here in the Northwest. Dozens of mixed martial arts schools dot the greater Portland landscape, reaching from Gresham to Hillsborough. Tucked into the side of Mount Tabor in southeast Portland, Medellín offers its students the essential elements for an MMA foundation. I had the opportunity to talk to Ken Allen about his own journey within the world of mixed martial arts.
What facet of like the whole game do you feel like you still feel like you want to do the most work on? Like, I don't want to say it would be your weakest facet of your game, but like you feel like you want to work on that the most.
You know, I think it'd have to be wrestling. But I think wrestling is, it's just a fundamental base for MMA, whether you're going to compete or not. I mean, just even playing around the gym, if you have good wrestling, you're going to do better than a lot of people. It's like this, if again, back to the carbon copy thing, it's like if I got into jiu-jitsu, which is kind of the way it works for me, is like wrestling was something in my past that I liked. I had to take a lot of time off, and I still would sit in on practices and watch and things like that. So I've always had that. But when I went to start training jiu-jitsu, it's like that's what I wanted to do, and everything else is out the window, just focusing on submissions and jiu-jitsu. And I think maybe that is, you know, I had a bit of a turning point there with that whole idea and learning to put my own creativity in it, because I start learning jiu-jitsu, and then I start trying to use jiu-jitsu on good jiu-jitsu players, and all of a sudden I'm coming up short because we're doing the same game, they've just been doing it longer, a little bit better, and they're one step ahead of me. So once I got to a certain point in jiu-jitsu where I am comfortable and good blue belt level, you know, good purple belt level, then I went back to my wrestling. You know, it's like not to stray off too far from this one, but it's like you get into something, at least for me, it's like I get into something and it's like jiu-jitsu, I want to do it, and it's obsessive all day, every day, jiu-jitsu, jiu-jitsu, jiu-jitsu. It's all I think about for years and years, and then one day it just stops. You know, all of a sudden it's like, it's not so consuming in my mind anymore. So then, and then I can kind of think about my frustrations with it and why I'm not doing as well with some of these other players. And then I start going back to my wrestling, and now I start adding my own wrestling in, and now I start kind of fusing these things together. So now I'm going against somebody that might even be a little better at jiu-jitsu than me, but I'm able to control him, and I'm able to out-wrestle him when I need to. When he's trying to do jiu-jitsu on me, I'm out-wrestling him. When he's trying to get a takedown, trying to wrestle with me, I'm jiu-jitsuing him. And I'm mixing those so well that I can start to control the matches. And when I go into a straight jiu-jitsu tournament, I notice those effects, and I notice that advantage that I have, especially overseas, is where they don't have as much wrestling, but they have really good jiu-jitsu guys, but I just wrestle with them. Right.
Well, I know that like part of the reason that you had to take time off from wrestling was something pretty intense that happened to you when you were in high school, right? Yeah.
It's like growing up, maybe around 15 years old, it's like, you know, I won't go into too many details of my family life and stuff, but it really is like, you know, broken home and you know, a single mother, and and a brother. He's 6 years older than me, and all of his friends, obviously I'm the little brother, so I'd get,
Right.
you know, always wrestling me, throwing me around,
Right.
you know, picking on me, you know, if just for fun, you know, and I had fun too. We had boxing gloves. We didn't have two sets, so we just had one each.
My brother and I did the same thing. We just like,
So it was pretty ugly, you know.
Yeah.
So what happens was I'd go through all that stuff, and you know, I had fun. Sometimes I didn't have fun.
Yeah.
But some, you know, a lot of times it's fun. But you know, I started to watch maybe in '95 or something. My friend Mike had brought over a VHS tape of the UFC and told me I got to see this Gracie guy.
Oh yeah.
So I'm watching it, and
Gracie.
you know, it's like, you know, I was probably thinking the same thing everyone else was. It's like the guy was just getting beat up for 15 minutes, and they're raising his hand down. Like, what happened?
Yeah.
So then I'd start slow motion, you know, really start to see his leg go over and the elbow extend, or watch him get a Kimura or a choke, or watch how he sweeps. And in the old UFCs, they had like a little segment before the fight, and it'd show them doing some techniques.
Okay.
And then it'd show Ken Shamrock doing some techniques. So I'd, you know, play, pause, play, pause, play, pause until I learned those techniques. And
How old were you?
I was like probably 15.
Okay.
And then my brother, and then they'd wrestle me, and every time we'd wrestle, I'd always get a little better and a little better, and start arm barring them, start triangling them, start shoulder popping them, you know, just doing all these things. So I knew off my, you know, natural movements and a little bit of wrestling background that I could do this. You know, I knew that it's something that I could be good at, so I'd always played with it. And then by the time I was 17, I decided that my friend Brian lived up here, Brian Compton. He wanted me to come and stay up here with him. And I wanted to wrestle at Lincoln High School. I knew some guys that wrestled there, and they said it was a good program. So I moved up here to do that, and I was here for maybe 6 months or so, maybe 8 months, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I never really got into jiu-jitsu. I was a little bit nervous to get into it. To be honest, you know, at the time I had the jitters, and like I went to a couple schools. One of them I didn't really like, and another one I wanted to, but I was a little hesitant to just go right into it. Yeah. And I started working at Stadium Fred Meyer. And one night I was closing, and so it was about midnight, closed the store. My roommate met me, and we walked across the street up on 20th and Burnside. And yeah, I was just standing out there. He had smoked cigarettes at the time. He was smoking a cigarette, and we're standing against the wall, and this car pulls up, and like 6 Vietnamese guys got out, and they just kind of single file line where we're standing against the wall. And one of them said some things to me, asked me if I had some drugs, and I'm like, no, I don't have anything. And while I was looking at him, another one took a silver necklace off of my neck, like just a thin chain as well, nothing flamboyant, you know. And you know, he pulls that off, and just out of instinct, and it kind of goes back to the whole living room brawls with my brothers. Like, it was fighting. I didn't think about the consequences, you know? I didn't really think about it. My mind doesn't work in that violent way where I wouldn't do those kind of things. So I just thought that it was a fight, and you know, I didn't even think. You know, the guy pulled something off of me, and I just kind of locked up with him and get a good takedown on him, dump him. And then I could feel some of them trying to jump on me, so I got my hooks, wrap my legs around his back and get a choke, which probably, looking back, wasn't the smartest thing I could have done. But I did out of instinct, and I put a choke on him, and I tucked my head, and I could only hide one side of my head, and like instantly right there I started to get kicked and punched, and I was getting punched in my back. It felt hot, but I only thought that I was getting punched. And I took a few good stomps to my head here, and I could feel, it's kind of like when you're in a dentist getting a tooth pulled or grinded on, you could hear it like deep inside of your skull. Like I could feel and hear like the orbital bone just kind of crush. And when that crushed, the bones bent in and tore tendons in my left eye and affected my vision. I've lost most of the sight in my left eye. Yeah, it was crazy. When I felt that, I jumped up. And right when I jumped up, one of them, I seen the knife go into my belly and got stabbed right under my belly button into my bladder. And so now I'm just kind of swinging, saying, you know, I'm through, I'm done. You know, kept saying it, but still fighting. And, you know, that went on for another minute or so, and then they all got into their car and drove off. And I'm standing there with one pant leg almost ripped off. I felt like I just got sprayed with a hose, and I thought that I got stabbed twice. That's what I was thinking. And I walk over to the curb, kind of get a bit dizzy, and grab the wall and just kind of collapse. And I lay there for a little while looking up at this freaking Handy Mart sign, thinking like, You know, that's the last thing I'm going to be looking at.
Wow.
And it just felt like my insides exploded, like literally exploded. I kept trying to shift to get comfortable, but it wasn't happening. And then I was just out. That was that. So then I woke up in the hospital with some hoses being stuffed down my throat, and the doctor's asking me some crazy questions that really threw me off. And the next day I woke up and had 37 staples in my belly. I'd gotten stabbed 3 times in my right leg, once in my left leg, 4 times in my back, twice in my...
Oh my gosh.
And I got my orbital crushed, so it was pretty bad.
Yeah.
And then, you know, that all got into my kidney, my bladder, my large intestine, my small intestine got cut in half. So it was quite the recovery on that one. I laid in the Emmanuel Hospital for about close to a month.
Wow.
And, you know, push button morphine, and that was that. It sounds like a nightmare, but it was quite a humbling experience.